Falling in love with the process. Now, this is something I think in the fire service, it's something to it's hard to harness young firefighters. We're in the sense when they come into the fire academy, we're so quick to look to the field. And I understand that. We want to get out, we want to start going to fires to start learning. However, when we get to the field, we're so quick to look across the floor. So where I come from in New York City, most firefighters start in the engine company. And then they gravitate to the truck company, which is called crossing the floor. Um, some guys try to do that very quickly, and I understand that because there's a sense of not a bigger job, but a different job in the truck versus the engine. Now, the engine, they get beat up, they run around, but water on the fire saves more lives than anything else. And I think that we have to make a series of mistakes in the engine before we start looking at the truck, and that's something that gets overlooked. So falling in love with the process means just nourishing every moment, making as many mistakes as you can, because now when you get to the truck, we naturally start thinking about what's next: promotion, rescue, squad, special operations. These are all the things that are going through our mind in our career path that I'm always supportive of pushing someone forward in their career, but we have to just be able to slow down and simply fall in love with the process of becoming a great firefighter. We have to go and find that fire. And this is what gets lost a lot of times. People are searching behind the line, searching behind that advancing engine. We have to think of it as, again, the infantry of the fire service is the engine company, and then the truck company is more of the recon, the special forces, in the sense they go locate that seat of the fire. Now, in the truck, we carry a 2.5-gallon water can. Now, that sole purpose for that man is to hold back a fire within the apartment, in the room, so the other brothers can now pass that fire and search that back bedroom. Again, in the truck, we're forcing entry, we're locating that fire and searching ahead, above, and beyond the engine company. So the senior firefighter, this is the individual, in my opinion, he runs the house, not just the rig. He runs behind the scenes. He's the guy that has the say all on everything, more or less. And it's a huge, huge, huge opportunity to have that. You don't see what I'm trying to get at is you don't have to have the guy with the most time in the firehouse be the senior guy per se. It's the guy that steps into that role. That's what I'm trying to get across is that you have a lot of guys that have a lot of time, but they're not the guys that are really the ones that are like leading the way. As the job changes, I mean, it sounds crazy, but with just you and I sitting here talking, the job's changing. Social media, it's changing the job. And a lot of these older senior guys, they're not in tune with that. And I understand that, but they have to realize that these guys have a different way of learning. The next generation has a way of learning that was never identified before in the fire service. And I think that's where the senior guy is not so much that guy with 40 years, but maybe that guy with 18 to 22 years. That becomes your senior guy. And the importance of that guy truly is leading and running that firehouse for the core of it. So I think that the men and the women in the firehouse, they're the ones that put that guy in the role or that woman in the role, that senior person. It's not something that's appointed. It's not something that's given. It's something that it's earned. It's earned with the respect by doing the right thing on and off the fire ground. So that's where that comes from. And the question is, when you don't have that guy, who's it become? And that's where we're having a problem with the next generation coming in. And that's why I feel through my platform on Top Fuel Tactics, the senior guy has become global in the sense where I put the senior guy in the palm of your hand. All you have to do is sit down and read a few posts and you kind of understand that gap or understand where to fit in, not only at the fire, but like where to fit in within the hierarchy of the firehouse. And that's where we're kind of getting lost. Not everyone gets to go to a great firehouse, right? At Proby School or in the volunteer world, not everyone gets to go back to their hometown and volunteer and have that core group of guys or girls that are doing the right thing, pushing the job forward. So that's where I feel that these opportunities of talking to you or social media, that fills that gap. The engines have been around longer than truck companies. The engine company, I try to um, parallel it with it's the infantry of the fire service, where that line is always progressively moving forward. And there's something behind that, and that comes from company integrity. And company integrity ultimately is just teamwork. But when you put a high level of stress behind that, it kind of throws an element that not everyone can truly handle unless they've actually experienced it. Now, time on the fire ground is everything. Just like in life, we use time for everything. But that time balance transfer of understanding your lower mind versus the higher mind. Lower mind simply logic, reason, and facts. Everything we're learning in the fire academy. You get to the fire ground and you're on the fire floor and floors above the fire, there's a high level of instinctual notion that we have to dial in on. But we can't get there until we can understand that space between, and that's that time. How long it takes to stretch the line off the rig to the top floor of a six-story building. There's a time balance transfer. Unless you've done that, you don't know that internal clock in your mind while you're searching ahead of the line beyond the fire, waiting for that line to get there. So that's why I feel it's so important is just understanding the time transfer balance of what the tasks it takes in the engine company versus the truck company. Because when you're working in the truck, you have to be understanding of and cognizant of how long those tasks are truly taking. So I think that the men and the women in the firehouse, they're the ones that put that guy in the role or that woman in the role, that senior person. It's not something that's appointed. It's not something that's given. It's something that it's earned. It's earned with the respect by doing the right thing on and off the fire ground. So that's where that comes from, and the question is when you don't have that guy, who does it become? And that's where we're having a problem with the next generation coming in, and that's why I feel through my platform on Top Fuel Tactics, the senior guy has become global in the sense where I put the senior guy in the palm of your hand. All you have to do is sit down and read a few posts, and you kinda understand that gap or understand where to fit in, not only at the fire, but, like, where to fit in within the hierarchy of the firehouse, and that's where we're kinda getting lost. Not everyone gets to go to a great firehouse, right, a Proby school, or in the volunteer world, not everyone gets to go back to their hometown and volunteer and have that core group of guys or girls that are doing the right thing, pushing the job forward. So, that's where I feel that these opportunities of talking to you or social media, that fills that gap. So, understanding the basics of search, it gets blurred because in the fire academy, and I'm sure we can all relate to this, is that how many times that we call for water, we get the line. Now we're going to go put the fire out. The truck's making the search, looking for people. They're finding their victims, their dummies. They're giving I got one here, I got one there, and they're bringing them back out. And it all happens kind of naturally, but we're programming robots. And that's where we're getting lost in the real world. When you go to the field, we have to understand that positioning of search is a lot different. Search is for life. Yes, that's what we do. We save lives. But that first company and the first truck company, they're searching for the fire number one. Once we find that fire, now we search away from that fire to that point of entry where we just came from. That's where we're getting blurred. So that basic search concept is that on the fire floor, we're looking for the fire first, directing the line in position because more lives are saved by getting water on the fire quickly and efficiently. We all know that. So let's do that. Let's find the fire. Let's get that line into position, and then we'll search away from the fire where most victims are most danger, and then search back to where we started. Now, however, the floor above, very, very different. Our search starts at that threshold. So the transformation from engine to truck, it's something that happens naturally, I feel. But we have to understand that when you're operating in an engine company, it's a learned behavior, right? Um, Company integrity, teamwork, and zero room for mistakes. Once you make a mistake in the engine, dominoes begin to fall the wrong way, and we don't get water on the fire. We don't get water on the fire, firemen die. It's just the way it goes. Now, in the truck, it's more of a dance, right? Where the engine's more of a cadence, a march. The truck's more of a dance, a ballroom dance, if you will, where there's some flexibility, there's some creativity, where you can make mistakes, but no one even knows you're making the mistakes because you're operating by yourself. An example is you could take a mirror thinking it's a window, and then you realize you just broke a mirror instead of a window. It happens often at fires, but it's something no one talks about. It's a mistake that no one even knows was made. So the difference between truck and engine is the ability to fluctuate within the moment, right? That ballroom dance. Um, it's more of a flow rather than a march. But orientation, that's the word you're looking for is orientation because in the engine, again, it's that march, it's that infantry, it's that progressively moving forward where the orientation factor in the truck, that's what we have to dial in. That's where we have to break free of company integrity and understanding that being on the line is integrity. I think a lot of it too is just being grateful for the job. Like I worked this was my dream. This is all I ever wanted to do since I can remember. And sometimes, I still look down on my shoulder and I'm like, holy shit, I'm a New York City fireman. Like, I'm doing it for over 20 years. I look down, I'm still a New York City fireman. That's huge. I have 2 kids in my fire. I call them kids, and they're not kids, they're adults, but there's 2 guys. One guy I taught in Proby school, and another kid that I just had the honor and the ability to work with and meet. One's from the Dominican Republic and one's from Puerto Rico. Born and raised, and they came here as adults, came on the fire department, and they're 2 of the best firemen I've ever worked with, and 2 of the most motivated, gritty, honest, real character guys I wanna work with forever. These are the guys, and it's because they're incredibly grateful to be there. They're never complaining. They have the mental toughness because, I mean, they grew up in a different country more or less, not a third world country, but they didn't grow up like I grew up. These guys love it, and I always wonder what drew them to the fire service, and, you ask them, they can't even really tell you. It just happened to appear for them, and those are the guys I wanna work with. Those are the guys that I believe make a great company, and ultimately, in the end, will make the great senior guys because 'cause they're grateful and they respect the job. So the podcast is something I've talked about for probably about a year and a half, 2 years now. I just never had the courage to come out and just do it. But I've teamed up with National Fire Radio, which is a platform here in the States. They're going to edit it, they're going to push it for me. I just have to hit record more or less. So I'm so honored and blessed to have that opportunity to do that with them. It's going to be called A View from the Top Floor with Mickey Farrell. And we're just going to dive in on hot button issues, more or less. It's not going to be that typical fire podcast where it's an interview such as this. It's more about tactics. It's about pushing the limits. Um, I'm not going to be the host that's going to prove someone's theory right. I'm going to try to be the host that's going to push the limits and maybe prove someone wrong in the sense like let's learn from these situations. Let's learn from these tactics. Not that anyone's right or wrong, but let's collectively talk about things and let's push it forward together and learn.